So we recently had Fed Chairman Jerome H. Powell have his annual Jackson Hole Symposium, and we have to talk about a couple of things. Now, if you missed the live speech that he had, here's the transcript, and this is everything that he said. This is actually pulled from FederalReserve.gov, so I'll go ahead and link this somewhere in the comment section of this video, but I want to go ahead and touch on a couple of things. Now, just a few days ago, I made a video highlighting how the Fed is about to flip the market, and I mentioned in that video how there was going to be a heightened sense of volatility, but ultimately, I believe that the market was going to be moving upwards. Now, of course, there was some choppiness, and the market did indeed push upwards. And that's because we had some positive developments from what we heard from Jerome Powell. It wasn't a lot of hawkish rhetoric like we've heard from some of the other FOMC members. Now, also something that's pretty notable, if we go ahead and take a look, yesterday was a pretty red day where the markets fell down. I actually, within the Push and Profit Private Group, mentioned how there was rumors that the Fed had said there was no rate cuts planned for the fall, and I said that I'm not buying into that at all. I also mentioned how that's just nonsense, and I put zero stock into any rumor of no cuts in fall, and we ended up seeing that that was definitely a rumor that the market overreacted to, and now we're seeing this big push up. We actually saw a big push from a lot of names. If we actually take a look at the bond market, TLT, or pretty much the TLT is the 20-year plus bond ETF. You could also look at TMF, which if you want something that's a bit more aggressive, it's basically TLT, but 3 times leverage. But anyways, whatever you're looking at, the bond market is pushing upwards, and so that's definitely positive. That was something that I mentioned within the Push and Profit Private Group is a trade idea that we like. But also names like NVIDIA are pushing up. Names like Tesla are pushing up, although not as great as other names. But ultimately, we're seeing a lot of companies and sectors do well. In fact, even small caps are really the ones who are the main beneficiaries, because the thing is, in a low interest rate environment, it creates a suitable type of environment for smaller cap companies. When you have these high interest rates, well, that's a challenging time for smaller companies who need to finance debt, right, in order to grow and expand. Remember, small caps are a lot of growth names, and so this is a lot of positives. Now, why is this? Well, Jerome Powell, in his speech, pretty much signaled that the Fed is going to be cutting. And I said this months ago. I actually said this months ago that within the Push and Profit Private Group, I mentioned we were likely to see the cuts take place in September. Now we see that even the future markets are pricing in a high likelihood of cuts for the September meeting, which is September 18th. We have a 67.5% chance that we're going to get a 25 basis point cut, and then a 32.5% chance that we're going to get a 50 basis point cut. Now, Jerome Powell, in his speech today, was a bit vague on what we're going to be seeing in terms of a 25 basis point cut or a 50 basis point cut. We got the confirmation that cuts are coming, but we didn't have that exact number, which of course is something that we should have expected. I don't believe Jerome Powell is going to say, hey, I think we're going to do this in the next meeting, of course, right? We always have to parse through what is actually said and kind of read between the lines. And so when you read between the lines, and again, I'll go ahead and put this in the comment section, so if you guys want to read this, but essentially, when you read between the lines, yes, inflation is not a concern. The trend of inflation is well over, right? Of course, when I say that, people always get upset. They're like, oh, but the grocery store prices are high. Yes, prices are higher than they were a few years ago, but we're talking about the trend of inflation, right? Inflation's always going up. We're just saying the trend of it is not high. It's kind of closer to that 2% range, that target. Now, one of the things that Jerome Powell mentioned is this concern about the labor markets, right? The rise in unemployment to 4.3%, although it's still low by historical standards, indicates a cooling labor market. And this kind of course, reduces the risk of wage-driven inflation, which is good from an inflationary standpoint. But now we have a concern that we may get into a bit of a recession, right? It's not confirmed, right? It's still like iffy, if we will, but there's a concern about the labor markets. And so that's ultimately what's going to be the main driver between how fast we get these rate cuts between the next few meetings. Now, of course, we know they're coming. We just want to know how aggressive is the Fed going to be, and that's going to be determined by the labor markets. And One of the things I also mentioned for those within the Push and Profit private group last night in our daily briefing is that, when I talked about people saying that there was a rumor that the Fed wasn't going to cut, I pointed this chart right over here, which is from the Federal Reserve Bank of Dallas, right? And this is the federal funds rate trimmed by the mean PCE inflation rate. In other words, this is what the market calls the real rate, right? This is the federal funds rate minus some variation of the core PCE numbers. And one of the things we see is that we're definitely in a higher restrictive area in terms of monetary policy to just a year ago. I mean, you take a look at last year, we're almost twice as high from where we were last year, right? Twice as high might be an overstatement, but significantly higher is where we are from last year. And so that just tells you that these tight monetary conditions are extremely tight. And of course, that's something that Jerome Powell acknowledged that is working. That's why we're seeing inflation, the trend of inflation go down. But then the concern is, well, what about the job market? Now, we had Nick Timos, or I call him Nick T because I always mispronounce his name. Now, he's actually a reporter from the Wall Street Journal, and he mentioned that the Powell pivot is complete, right? Wow, okay, so now we're getting everyone kind of, on the same boat. The pivot is complete. He also mentioned, here's some notable lines. He mentioned that the cooling in the labor markets is unmistakable. It seems unlikely that the labor markets will be a source of elevated inflationary pressures anytime soon. Okay, yes, that's what we talked about. We do not seek or welcome further cooling in the labor markets. This was a line here within that transcript that kind of lets us know that, the Fed, they're a bit concerned about the labor markets. He also mentioned that the time has come for policy to adjust, the direction of travel is clear, and the timing and pace of rate cuts will be dependent on incoming data, the evolving outlook, and the balance of risk. So again, just kind of in a different way, or this is word for word what Powell said, but in a different way from how I paraphrased it, that they're going to be looking at the labor markets. They also said we will do anything we can do to support a strong labor market as we make further progress towards price stability. So the narration has switched from inflation to the job markets, which is important because we know that the Fed has two ultimate goals, right? It's and we're looking at the small caps. Let's actually go to the bond market here, but I'll just say something real quick. The two mandates of the Federal Reserve is price stability, and then, of course, maximizing employment. And so we have price stability now on point. Yeah, they kind of messed up in the past with this whole inflation was transitory, mistake that they made back in 2021. But now the new concern is, well, job employment, right? So we'll go ahead and definitely keep an update for those within the Push and Profit private group. I'll definitely continue to provide updates for the markets. We're looking like we're getting some choppiness today. We just see we're in the middle of the day. We're seeing that we had this big move up. Now we're closing down. I know there were some recent developments with Iran and how the White House released a statement that they're going to be watching what happens with Iran. Of course, that's something you have to pay attention to within the markets, the geopolitical conflicts taking place. But with that said, hopefully you guys got a good view of the summary from what we got today, from what Jerome Powell said. And again, I'm going to go ahead and link this in the comment section below so you guys can read it yourself. And I'll see you guys on this next video right over here. Take care, guys.